Welcome back to my channel. So today's topic is basically going to be a review of my marriage and what happened during the course of my marriage and how it ended. As many of you know, Jehovah's Witnesses frown upon people marrying non-Jehovah's Witnesses. However, if you've seen my previous videos, I had made a decision early on that I was not going to limit myself when it came to marriage. So I did get married after dating. I dated a few people, and as all marriages start off, they are wonderful, and we had a pretty decent marriage for the first, I want to say 6 years or so, but then there was a decline. We were married for a total of 9 years. But there was a decline that started about 6 years in, and but the first 6 years were great. We enjoyed each other's company. We traveled. We had friends. We had a lot of good times. So I always treasure those memories. However, somewhere, like I said, 6 years in, there started to be some pressure. And I was starting to think that, it may be time for a separation. And I wasn't sure what to do. I hadn't said anything to my husband, but I was feeling like, we're getting into a period where I'm not really enjoying the relationship and the marriage as much. And I said, well, maybe we need to separate or something. And I was just kicking thoughts around in my mind. I was trying to be fair and be patient. I mean that I have flaws and he had flaws. And, that's with any person, right? But we were running up against a lot of disagreements, and he was becoming more and more irate when there were disagreements, and I was trying to figure out what was going on with him. So before I even mentioned anything to him about getting separated or anything, I was still trying to work through things. It wasn't an immediate decision. It was just something I was thinking about, because things hadn't been going well for a few months, and then things started to descend downward even more so. And separation, divorce is never an easy decision. So I decided to just, I was thinking about it for about a year or so. I was thinking about it in the back of my mind. Maybe things will get better. Maybe he'll calm down, or just, he was not abusive, by the way. It was just his argumentative nature that seemed to be flaring up more and more. So about the time that I was thinking about, maybe having a sit-down talk with him to discuss, like, why are we having these issues? And we had had a couple of discussions before, but now this time I was thinking about, we really need to sit down and have a serious talk, really, about, like, where are we headed with this, So it was around that time that he actually was diagnosed with cancer. And And so I really thought long and hard about that. And I said, you know, if he has cancer, I don't want to bring this up at this time. You know, I thought about, you know, I'm very empathetic with people, and you know, I always imagine, like, you know, what if that were me and you just suddenly get diagnosed with cancer, and oh, by the way, I think we should get separated. You know, it's like, that's kind of cruel as far as I'm concerned. I mean, people do what they want, but my thought process was that, you know, that's so cruel. And I said, well, and I thought about it, and I said, well, maybe without him realizing, maybe that's part of the agitation that was occurring in his life, you know, and he didn't know that that's where it stemmed from. Maybe it's possible. You know, I've heard different stories about people who've had diabetes and different ailments, and how their personality is impacted by these diseases. And so you know, I mean, I don't know if that was what was causing him to be so agitated and not as, you know, just really getting frustrated and annoyed about things that were sometimes things that were minor, and just, you know. So I said, well, maybe that's what's causing, you know, or part of, not that it's causing it, but part of what's causing the downhill slide in his demeanor. So I decided not to say anything about separation, or, you know, I wasn't really thinking about divorce. I was just thinking mainly separation at the moment. And you know, as time went on, you know, he eventually decided on getting the procedure done to, you know, remove the cancer. And then he continued to, I mean, he recovered. I worked with him through that. And, you know, we were together. I wanted to help him recuperate and get, you know, situated and, you know, get back to working and things like that, getting his life back to normal. So we worked through that challenging situation, and you know, the relationship, you know, it didn't get better, it didn't get worse, but there was still a lot of challenges because my emotions were not in a good place. I was not in a good emotional place. So as time went on, it was about, I want to say, about a year after, you know, he was essentially fully recuperated. Out of the blue, I mean, you know, through my job, it was just out of the blue that I ended up having I guess you would call it a fling of some sort with a coworker. And it was really that. It was just a fling. It was just, there was a connection we had, and, you know, it happened a few times. And then it was over. You know, it was just something. And at first I felt guilty, and I couldn't understand how I ended up in this situation, but I learned over time that it didn't make me a bad person, which I thought was interesting, because, you know, I was still, even though I was out of the religion, you know, I grew up with all of those thoughts of damnation and, oh, you're a sinner, you're no good, you're this, you're that, you're, you know, they have all sorts of names for women who you know, end up straying from a relationship and, you know, with someone else. So I grew up with that, right? So naturally my first thoughts were like, oh, Sansri, how did you get into this? Well, how did you end up engaging in this. And so I eventually, I made peace with it because I realized it wasn't serious. It wasn't something. And it wasn't about sex itself. It was just my emotions were more attracted to this person, and we were on an emotional path that collided and unexpectedly, and we just, we did what we did, and that was it. So I made peace with it after, like I said, it was brief. It wasn't very long, and I just moved on. I didn't want anything out of it. I didn't want, it wasn't the type of thing where I was suddenly in love with someone else or anything like that. It was just something that happened, an event that happened. And so I thought about it afterwards because I was wondering how did I end up in that situation. I did not discuss it with my husband, because the relationship still was not back to a more normal place. It was still in a dark place. So even though he recovered from the cancer, it was still in a dark place. So as time went on, I was starting to really feel like, wow, he was very depressed. I didn't realize that was what was going on, but he was really starting to suffer from depression, and it really destroyed our connection. And he really then started to descend downward even further, emotionally, descending downward. So then at one point, he was not abusive. However, he did, on 2 occasions, had some disagreements. And he kind of stood in the way of me trying to move about in the house. And I says, okay, this is really not good. And I'm the type of person that I had to really, at that time, I was more of a volatile person. And I did not want to end up in a violent fight with him. Because at that time, I'll just say that I would have went after him, and that wouldn't be good for me or for him. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to have to lay my cards on the table. And so I did. I told him that the marriage, for all intents and purposes, was over. Because I can't, your personality, the way you're doing things, the way you're just becoming more and more volatile. We've talked about these things. We even started doing counseling. And he was just irate. He was angry. Just angry. And I said, look, I can't do this. So then he started harassing me about wanting to get divorced. He had been divorced in his first marriage. And one thing that I guess I should have been tipped off to was that he said to me on 2 occasions, I'm not going to go through a divorce again. That's what he said. And at the time, I wasn't really in tune with my intuition or anything like that, so I just kind of let it pass. And I thought, well, what does he mean? What's he saying, you know? So anyway, things came to a head one day when he woke up, asked me if I was going to pursue a divorce. Had I changed my mind? And oh, I meant to tell you, when we met with the counselor, we went to counseling for about 2 months. And the counselor, the last session we had, the counselors pulled me aside and said, listen, I don't know what to tell you. He was a man also, so he wasn't taking sides, but he said, I think this is not, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I don't see there's nothing really has changed. And this is a very difficult situation. I don't know. So that's what he said to me. And he's a counselor. He's counseled many people about marriages and so on. So anyway, I was hoping things would get, something would change, but nothing did. And I, went so that, that one morning he got up and said, hey, are you still pursuing this divorce thing? You still want to get divorced? And I said, yes. And then he got up and came over to me and stabbed me. I was in total shock, and then he started getting ready to stab me again, and just kept, and I jumped into fight or flight mode. I was just in disbelief. I was like, are you serious? Are you really? And that's when I realized he was trying to kill me. He wanted to commit murder-suicide. So, needless to say, I fought. We ended up on the floor. It was the strangest experience because my mind, I didn't have time to digest it at the moment because I was trying to save my life, But I thought back to it once I got into the hospital. I'll just tell you what I will tell you is how this continued. So while I was fighting, I fought. Somehow, I had this whole conversation that happened in my head. And I didn't have time to dwell on it because I was trying to, like I said, save my life. So just to kind of tell you what happened, because it ties into how I got out of the situation. So fighting. And somehow this whole conversation took place. It was almost like it's equivalent to a near-death experience. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but look it up online. You can Google it. There's your YouTube experiences. People all over the world have had these experiences. And just to give you a quick definition, it's when you actually Some people have had it when they're in a coma. Some people have had it when they've actually died briefly and then came back to life. And the gap in between, something amazing happens where you're connected to a higher source in the universe, and you're communicating not with your mouth but on an invisible, your invisible energy is communicating. And so when you come to and you're like awake and aware, and you know, in your human experience, you're like, oh my God, you know, I actually, you know, experienced this. And most people, you know, are afraid to talk about it because a lot of people who've never experienced that will tell them that they're crazy or something like that, you know. So I had something very similar. It wasn't this grandiose experience like some people have had. Some people have had amazing experiences, but in my case, it happened when I was being attacked. And it was like, I'm going to try to explain how it happened. It was like a whole conversation. You know, a conversation generally is one person speaks, the other person listens, then the other person responds, then the first person is listening while the other person responds in a linear fashion. Well, this conversation was not linear. It was instantaneous. It was like a millisecond. It wasn't even a second. It was like the whole conversation, boom, done. And I'm fighting, and so I'm going to explain the conversation, because on a human level we do things like, you know, I said this, he said that, then he said this, and then she said that. That's how we understand things on a human level. So that conversation was this. I was on the floor fighting. My brain almost like, not my brain, my mind split into two. My mind split into two compartments, and they had a conversation. This one said, your spirit is strong. You're going to be fine. This one said, from the ego mind, the mind that's seeing what's happening, what are you talking about? I'm here by myself. I'm screaming and no one can hear me. This one says, you're going to be okay. You have so much more work to do. And this one is saying, oh, I don't know how am I going to get out of here? And it was just, I'm just trying to explain it. It was just, that whole conversation just, it was like that. And the next thing I knew, it was almost as if there was an invisible force pulling me under the bed. And I was like, oh, okay. And I'm getting under the bed, I'm fighting, but I'm being pushed under the bed. He wasn't pushing me. He was just trying to hurt me as much as possible. And I was under the bed. Now, he's not a big man, but he couldn't fit under the bed. He's bigger than me, and I'm, you know, somewhat slender. So I was able to fit under there, and kind of, we had a big 4-poster bed, so it was the underneath was enough where I couldn't sit up, but I could almost sit up halfway. And as I moved my head up, my head hit the slat under the bed. And then I says, oh, I have a slat. And I pulled it down. And I was able to I just waited because I saw his feet moving, because he realized he couldn't get to me under the bed. Even if he could get under the bed, you can't attack me under the bed, because, you know. But he couldn't fit under the bed, so he walked around. He says, I'm done with this life. I'm done. And I was just crying. It's just, and I tried to reason with him. I said, you have people who love you. Why would you? You know? He says, I'm done with this life. He says, you go ahead and live. But I'm done. And I just sat there under the bed. I didn't know what he was going to do. So he laid down. He still had the knife in his hand. He went to get the knife, and because I knocked it out of his hand, I was able to get it out of his hand. And then he laid down, and he tried to, you know, I don't know what he was doing. I just saw that he laid down, because I could see him, because obviously I'm on the ground under the bed. So since he had laid down, I was like, okay, he's laying down, so I can maybe try to jet out of here, because the door was closed. That was another thing. The door was closed. And I was on the top level of a townhouse. So I was like, okay, he's laying down. So I ran. I dashed with the slat to try to use it to keep him away from me. I got the door open, and he jumped up and tried to grab me. And he grabbed the back of my hair, but he pulled some of my hair out. And I just kept running. I didn't care. I got close, you know, a pretty good head start, because he was laying flat on the floor in an attempt to probably just try to kill himself. I don't know. So I ran downstairs and flagged down somebody, and then of course they called the cops and the ambulance and all that. So I got in the ambulance. He apparently had sent an email. He had already had it ready to go. And he must have crafted it the night before, sent it out to all of our, you know, all of his family, because he didn't have my folks' email address, but. And, you know, the closest relatives nearest were like 5 miles away, and they were obviously trying to call, and, you know, no answer. So they drove over, and they saw all this drama, and, you know, ambulance and police and all these things. So they got to the hospital, and they asked me if I heard anything while I was in the ambulance. And I says, I was in fight or flight mode, so my adrenaline was, I couldn't think, couldn't do anything. I was in the, you know, ambulance, so they were trying to treat me and treat the wounds, and so when I got to the hospital, they said, oh, they asked me, did you hear anything? I says, no, I was in the ambulance. How could I hear anything? They says, well, his cousin and his wife, who we were very close to. Says, oh, okay, well, there were 2 shots that rang out. When we drove up, we heard the 2 shots. He says, oh, okay. And they said, well, he's passed. He was killed. Yeah. was like, okay, that is what he wanted. Because I will never forget his words. He said he was done with this life. So, that is what happened. So anyway, I, spent some days in the hospital reflecting, on things, and but now it's been several years now, about going on 6 years. But the truth is that despite all that happened, initially, the marriage, for the most part, it was good. But it only takes one person to tear it up. It takes one person to break it, right? It takes two people to really work at it. And, I understand, like I said, I'm not perfect. I'm not, trying to blame. I'm not doing any of that stuff. But it made me appreciate the beauty of life. And there's something good that always comes out of things, right? There's something good. Despite the trauma of it, I learned so much. So much. So I am thankful. I am grateful. It was necessary to live and have that experience. It is partly what has shaped me now. So I appreciate my husband because he taught me a lot. I have no animosity. None. Zero. It was something that I lived through, and after getting to the other side, I am grateful. And there's no need to blame anybody or anything. It's here for my growth, and that's what I experienced. I experienced tremendous growth out of that. Tremendous growth. And anything that anyone experiences, any challenges that we face, they really are here for us to grow. Because you grow through what you go through. You really do. It may not feel good at the moment. That felt awful, what I went through, but I can now look back and be thankful that I survived and was able to learn the lessons from that experience. So thank you for listening. I will speak more about that experience that I had. But that will be, I'll save it for another video. I don't want this video to be too long. I got through it. So thank you again for listening, and hopefully it will help you see the importance of pushing through the challenges that you face. We all face challenges, and there will be more to come. But remember that you are strong. You really are. And this experience with the Jehovah's Witnesses, you can get through that. You can. It's here for your growth. I know if you're still in it, you don't understand or see how that's possible, but everything is here for our growth. But if you stay in the sadness of it, you'll never grow. So you need to focus. It takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. But just take out the time to reflect once you get out of a situation. Reflect back and think, now what can I learn from that? And you'll be amazed when you really, really open your mind to looking back and thinking and realizing how brave and powerful you are. So once again, thank you for listening, and I will see you again hopefully on the next video. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm here to offer encouragement. I'm here to help as many people as I can, show them a path to freedom and self-empowerment. That's what it's about. That's how you get to a beautiful life. Thank you. Bye.